Republican Congressman Andy Biggs, a member of the Judiciary Committee and the Freedom Caucus. Congressman Biggs, thanks so much for joining us. You know, the Mueller situation becomes murkier and murkier by the moment. Last week, the mainstream media, I think, deliberately floated out the idea that President Trump was going to fire Mueller to sort of get everyone off the trail. But the real issue here, I would suspect, and your issue, are the mounting conflicts within this investigation.
Absolutely, Charles. Every time we turn around, there's a new revelation. Last week it was about Strzok and his paramour, or alleged paramour, Lisa Page, and their attempt in a godlike fashion to control the outcome of the election. Then there's the Mr. Orr and his wife, who are teamed up with Fusion GPS to create that dossier. And what do we find out over the weekend? Mueller's team has appropriated 10,000 transition team emails, many of which are considered confidential and privileged. And so one wonders, what is next? Jeff Sessions said they don't have a process to vet. Christopher Wray said they don't have a process to vet. And it's obvious there's no process to vet whether people have conflicts or bias in this, because every time we turn around, these huge biases come forward. Well, it's not fair.
But what about the issue of special counsel, a special prosecutor, just withdrawal? Just, you know, a lot of folks on both sides of the aisle saying, hey, you know, another special prosecutor, another special investigation only prolongs the agony of what we're going through now. Because I think a lot of folks forget that the timeline to this goes back over a year, and so far there's no evidence of any sort of collusion.
Right. You know, so what we're not asking for another special prosecutor or special counsel necessarily. We need Mueller to move on. We need somebody to come in and take over that if you're going to continue with that. But the other thing that has happened is we've determined that there's all kinds of misconduct in the Hillary Clinton investigation by these same people that are now investigating President Trump. And this is where you go and say, well, maybe there should be a special prosecutor. And that's one thing that they said, they would reopen that if the Inspector General who's looking at this says that there were irregularities. That's what we're finding out. There are irregularities. And Mueller's keeping it all internal. He's not the one who's releasing this. It's the Inspector General or FOIA requests. He's keeping it all under his hat until he gets caught. And that's part of the problem here.
What about the idea that perhaps Mueller is very close to wrapping this thing up and it could come to some sort of conclusion very shortly?
Well, you know, if that's the case, he hasn't told anybody here in Congress. And if he's going to wrap it up, then let's get it wrapped up and let's move on. But what the problem is, even if he wraps it up, this whole thing's been tainted. It's been tainted because of the people he's had on his team and his inability to vet them and determine that, hey, they have a bias here. That's part of the problem.
You know, of course, we've heard where everyone has a sort of embedded bias, and you expect professionals, particularly those at the FBI and Department of, the Department of Justice, to be able to park them at the door. Do you believe that some of the people involved in this actually did let their biases against Donald Trump influence their work?
Yeah, absolutely. I understand we all have biases. We all believe certain things. It's the unfair bias. It's the conflict of interest. That's what we're seeing here. And yeah, I absolutely believe that's what we're seeing. And that's why I think the whole American people, I know when I go home, my constituencies, they're like, pull the plug on this. This is not fair to President Trump, and it's not fair to the American people. And it certainly is not helping the agencies at all involved.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. It's tainted, and it's going to take a long time to really unravel this thing. Representative Biggs, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Charles. Good to be with you.